Welcome to the Newsroom with Sana. Today we're going to be taking a look at three important stories. The first is going to be what is going on in Bangladesh with the court sentencing the ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to death. And this is, of course, something that has happened after a month-long trial with regards to the crackdown that she ordered on student-led protests last year, in which, according to United Nations report, more than 1,400 people died and thousands others were injured. And this, of course, is something extremely important to the current dynamics within Bangladesh as well. We, of course, know that Sheikh Hasina had fled to India, has been living there since August 24, and of course essential to what really is the impact that it brings to the nexus between India and Bangladesh. The ministry has also issued a statement given the fact that this is a verdict that has gone to somebody that they are giving refuge to, saying that they've noted the court's ruling and not saying much on that. But in terms of the way that this is going to proceed further, it remains to be seen how exactly it's going to affect the domestic parts of Bangladesh and, of course, the political implications it holds, with the party leader saying they will not appeal unless there is a proper democratically elected government. We're also going to be taking a look in our next story at what is happening in Russia. The SCO heads of councils meeting as part of the SCO is happening in Moscow, and this is, of course, very, very integral to the way that different countries will get together and collaborate and talk about key issues, with Pakistan's stance being represented by the Deputy Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, Mr. Ishaq Dar, and of course will be very integral to how Pakistan will be putting forward its geopolitical stance and what it really needs to put forward in the regional and international dynamics. And lastly, we're going to be taking a look at how COP30 is proceeding in Brazil. With 1 week already gone, there is a lot of debate and discussions as to what really is the current scenario and whether or not it has been able to achieve much more than what is being said. And it seems a lot of the actions that were required have not truly been discussed in letter and spirit as to how exactly they're going to be implemented, with a lot of lip service and rhetoric being given out, but no substantial way forward as of now, moving things ahead, especially for those countries like Pakistan who are suffering from climate-induced disasters. We're now going to be taking a look at our first story that focuses on what is happening in Bangladesh with this very important ruling against Sheikh Hasina. And for that, we've been joined by Bangladesh correspondent TRT World, Mohammad Kamruzzaman, and a barrister at law, Dr. Najib Momen. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of the newsroom today. I'll start with you, Mr. Kamruzzaman, and I want your perspective as to how you understand the situation on ground. This is, of course, a trial that has been going on for about a month now, and this is a very, very integral aspect of the current political dynamics in Bangladesh. How do you see this ruling, and especially in the ways that it's going to be affecting the dynamics that the country has across the border, also with India? What do you think is the level of this ruling that has been given? Do you think that this is at par with what has happened before, or do you think it's unprecedented in Bangladesh?
Thank you very much for having me. Actually, this is really very unprecedented, because in the history of Bangladesh, for the first time, in the wake of a mass uprising, any ruling prime minister fled the country and taken shelter in another country, and that prime minister faced trial for human rights violation, including mass killing. So everything is very new in the history of Bangladesh. So people were actually so much enthusiastic to see the judgment, because in the last year's mass uprising, there were many very inhuman, very brutal practices, like shooting from the helicopter, and even burning the dead bodies, or direct shooting. So there were so many brutal murders during last year's mass uprising that visuals are also available in those inhuman activities. And even during the nearly 16-year-long authoritarian rule of Sheikh Hasina, there were many incidents of extrajudicial killings and forced disappearances. So Bangladeshi people were so much fed up against Hasina's regime, and people saw the human rights violation at the time. So this judgment was very much important and much awaited verdict. And very ironically, the International Crimes Tribunal that was formed by Sheikh Hasina's administration to size the political opponents of her, and even through this crimes tribunal, the politicians, especially the top leaders of Jamaat Islami and some leaders of Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, were executed. Those trials were so much controversial, including abduction of the eyewitness from the tribunal's gate. So there are so many scandals. Now, after all those misrules and authoritarian regime through a mesmerizing, the same prime minister was accused of crimes against humanity under the same court. So it was really very ironic, very interesting, and people were waiting for this verdict. And even today, the whole courtroom was packed with so many journalists, so many foreign journalists, and even some observer. And outside the court premise, there were a huge number of people who were chanting slogans for capital punishment of ex-Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. And today's verdict, you know that ex-Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been served capital punishment or death penalty, as well as former Home Minister. And every document was crystal clear. So there was no scope actually to deliver any other verdict except capital punishment.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mr. Kamruzzaman, stay with us and I'll come back to you with another question. I would also like to enter into the discussion, Dr. Najib, and try to understand what really do you think about the procedures and the legalities of this decision, because we of course have Sheikh Hasina and her party talking about how this was a sham trial, how this was a decision taken by kangaroo courts and it wasn't something that was fair and that was politically motivated. And of course, given that these are statements that any political or otherwise person is going to give if a ruling isn't in their favor. But in terms of the ways that you have analyzed the trial and what has happened last year, the way it's documented by the United Nations, the way the prosecutors have said they have evidence with regards to these orders being given by Ms. Hasina. So in terms of where you think this is going, how do you see, first of all, the trial and then this conclusion and the way that it can be challenged by her party?
Thank you for having me in this discussion. First of all, this tribunal has been set up by Sheikh Hasina herself. So it was set up in 2009 to persecute political opponents of Sheikh Hasina. And the very law, it was created by Sheikh Hasina. And it was a draconian law. It was criticized by international community. Nevertheless, she executed her political opponents by this tribunal and through this legal procedure. So now it's a irony that she faced the same tribunal under the same law. And I don't think she has, or her party has, any moral high ground to criticize this law. We criticized when we used to defend some of the defendants, political leaders, opponents of Sheikh Hasina in early 2010 and till 2016. At that time, international lawyers, also our team, we used to criticize this tribunal as a kangaroo trial. Now it's irony that Sheikh Hasina, who used to be who set up this trial, now she is claiming that her own tribunal is a kangaroo tribunal, and the law, she's criticizing that law as well. So I don't think she has any moral ground. Having said that, it would have been better if the government, the interim government, they adopted the recommendations and the opinion of the international jurists and international stakeholders to change this tribunal and update this the law. But nevertheless, what credit to them, we have to give them some credit for ensuring transparent procedure of this trial. It was telecast live on TV, and many observed that in the tribunal as well. So it was transparent, Everybody saw what happened, and the atrocities committed in 2024 throughout July and August. As you pointed out, United Nations did a thorough investigation on it, and it was well-founded crimes against humanity. So there is no doubt about that, but we have to take that with a pinch of salt that if law was updated, they wouldn't have that room to criticize this at all. But again, this is their creation, this is their Frankenstein, and they're now facing that.
Right, absolutely. And Dr. Najib, can you also shed light on how far does this extend to a country that is harboring this fugitive? We, of course, have India giving refuge to Ms. Hasina since last year. And now with this particular decision, it of course changes the dynamics of what the situation is. And this is something that the law or the internal dynamics of Bangladesh can be extended to. I want your understandings in terms of how far do you think then this will extend to the state of India, to the party that is sitting there, to what they're currently engaging in and making sure that this fugitive is still seeking refuge within their country.
The dynamics between India and Bangladesh, India, Awami League and Sheikh Hasina's regime, you were known as an ally, trusted ally of India. Sheikh Hasina openly said that she gave many things to India, which they will never forget. And we see what she meant, and now India is paying her back. So in the regional politics, India always dominated over Bangladesh, and we are surrounded by India in three corners, and they are actually diplomatically speaking, it's not they treated us in past as a colony. So there are many issues with them, like the water in Farrakabad and other rivers. They created dams and things. Those are unsolved issues. On top of that, now they're giving shelter to Sheikh Hasina, who is a fugitive. So we don't have the problem we have. We have that exchange of prisoners treaty with them, but that is not fully functional, and they will definitely use this death penalty as an excuse not to return Sheikh Hasina to Bangladesh. But again, what's their intention? This very tribunal, many says it's a creation of both India and Awami League. Those who were persecuted under this tribunal during Awami League regime, those are known as anti-Indian. So now, after that mass uprising in Bangladesh in 2024, Sheikh Hasina straightaway went to India. So why India? Because she served the purpose of India. Now it's time for India to pay her back. Also, through Sheikh Hasina, India is trying to organize some protest against this government and things. India, clearly, they are facilitating Awami League to create cause some atrocities in Bangladesh. So these things need to be addressed.
Absolutely. But Dr. Najib, what I wanted to understand was whether or not there are any legal obligations that can be put forward, especially in terms of what the court ruling has been done, and then, of course, what international law dictates. But I'll come back to you on that. Please stay with us, and we'll discuss that further. I'll come back to now Mr. Kamruzzaman, and I'm going to be discussing what really are the dynamics. And, of course, as you pointed out earlier as well, there is a lot of discussions and engagement between Sheikh Hasina and India, but of course these dynamics are extending between two states. And so in terms of what really is going to be the response of the governments is very, very important. What do you think? We've had a statement come out from within India, but what really do you think will be the stance that India's government will take?
Actually, Narendra Modi's stance, or Indian current regime's stance, is very clear to the people of Bangladesh. That's why Bangladeshi people are also so much aggrieved with the India and anti-Indian sentiment is rising here in Bangladesh. And seemingly, the Narendra Modi administration is not in a position to return back Hasina. And you know that I have already mentioned during the meeting between Dr. Yunus, the interim government head of Bangladesh, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Yunus raised the issue of returning back Hasina for justice. But seemingly that was not very effective, and India was not in a position to return back Hasina. And even there were political activities being done by Sheikh Hasina staying in India. And even there were reports that in India, there are some political offices of Awami League, and they are trying to create anarchy here in Bangladesh to destabilize the environment of Bangladesh. So from Bangladesh, it was criticized. And even Dr. Yunus raised this issue that staying there, Sheikh Hasina trying to destabilize the politics here in Bangladesh. But Narendra Modi replied that on social media, Indian government has no hand. So seemingly India is not in a position to do anything in response to the demand of Bangladeshi people, as well as Bangladesh running interim government. But as a friendly country, if India demands itself, or if India claims it's as the closest neighbor and friendly neighbor of Bangladesh, India must avoid this style of behaving with the neighbor, because India should try to establish relationship with the people of Bangladesh, not with any particular political party. That's why the anti-Indian sentiment is really rising here, and the youth, they are losing minimal trust to India as its closest neighbor. So I think that Indian current regime should change its stance. But I don't believe that Modi administration has that type of moral strength to change its stance regarding the Sheikh Hasina issue.
Right. Mr. Kamruzzaman, there's also, of course, concern in terms of what the domestic pressure is. The elections are just around the corner, and we've seen that Sheikh Hasina's party is saying that they will not be appealing till there is a democratically elected government. And there's, of course, a lot of challenges to how exactly they're going to play out as part of these internal dynamics. Their party, of course, will not be taking part. But in terms of the way that that's affecting what the people are demanding for, they've suffered a lot. We've had hundreds and thousands of people who've lost their lives, and many more who have injured, and so many that have been impacted. What is their demand from the interim government, and what then will the interim government be able to do in the current scenario with the court's ruling? And if not the interim government, then how exactly do you think the elections are going to pan out in their decision-making process?
It's a very interesting question. Actually, this can be applied to Awami League also. You have mentioned about the that this interim government is not an elected government. Sheikh Hasina was not also elected government. You know that in 2014 national election, out of 300 constituencies, 153 constituencies, there were no election, and all the political parties boycotted the election. And even there were incidents of ballot stuffing on the previous night, and serious intimidation in the election process. So actually there were no fair and participatory elections in Bangladesh. So Sheikh Hasina was actually not an elected authority of Bangladesh. She was also a dictator according to the demand of the mass people of this country. That's why even
Absolutely. I totally understand that. I totally understand that. What I wanted to understand is what the power the interim government has in order to deal with the current scenario, and whether or not they'll be able to do that before the elections.
interim government, of course, has a huge mandate, because this government is not a normal interim government. This government come after a mass revolution or revolutionary uprising. So after that, this government came to power, not willingly. And after such a revolutionary movement, how can that defeated force can say this? So this is also question like this. So this interim government has already the mandate of the movement. That is also a mandate of mass people. So now what actually should do this interim government should create a very fair environment, and the partial people in judiciary, in civil administration, in police should be removed, so that a fair election can be held without the intimidation or without any indirect the role of any quarters. That is the main duty. And of course, this interim government should do that. And that is the mandate from the revolutionary movement. So there is no that type of question whether this interim government has that type of legal strength or the legality to do that. Of course, they can do that, and they should do that. But my concern is that whether by the pressure of India or sometimes the Awami League partymen who are still here, they may try to destabilize the country, because in the last couple of weeks we saw some arson attacks on public transport and other settlements. So there are also panic among the people. That is the big challenge for the interim government. And interim government should have the courage to face all those challenges and hold a fair, participatory and credible national election.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammad Kamruzzaman, for joining us and being part of the discussion. I'll come back to you, Dr. Najib. And we, of course, heard the conversation. There is this opinion that the interim government is legally powered enough to be able to do something about the current situation. But I want your expert opinion on this as to what legal authority or legal dynamics exist for the interim government to be able to use against Sheikh Hasina and, of course, against the state of India also. That is currently giving her projection. Do you think that there can be this power that can be exercised, be it by their own country or by international norms?
In terms of authority or legality of this government or legal standing of this government, of course, this is a revolutionary government. Our constitution, Article 7, categorically said that people's will be the highest authority. So after the departure of the last government, which was a dictatorship, a fascist regime, the people actually installed this regime with the authority, and they were given the mandate, 3 mandates. First of all, to bring Sheikh Hasina and her fascist regime to the justice, then held a credible, free and fair election, and last but not least, to make necessary reform in judiciary, in terms of judiciary, administration, especially in police administration. So they clearly have that legal standing. In terms of international, and I mean how they can enforce this verdict internationally. You have, the problem is we are a signatory of ICC Rome Statute, but India is not. We have bilateral prisoners exchange treaty with India. Under that, we can actually request India, but there is no international forum where we can actually go and force India to return Sheikh Hasina. Having said that, the problem we have, India always preferred certain political parties and individuals over the people. If they are true what they said in their statement after the verdict, they should return Sheikh Hasina to Bangladesh, because this government tried Sheikh Hasina under the mandate given by the people of Bangladesh. And you see what happened in last year, in 2024. Mass people came to the street and they forced Sheikh Hasina to leave the country, fled the country. So they gave the mandate. Under that mandate, the trial has been conducted, and a verdict has been passed through a transparent judicial process. So if India is true in their award that they prefer, they would like to collaborate with the people of Bangladesh, they should return Sheikh Hasina to Bangladesh.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Najib, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Of course, a lot remains to be seen as to exactly how this situation will unfold, but there needs to be a lot of discussions around how exactly that's going to happen, what really is the current dynamic within Bangladesh, and what is beyond shoulds as to what really can happen, because what is the situation that India has been giving Sheikh Hasina the protection since last year, and even now with this court ruling. It seems that both her and her party and the state that she is currently living in is not really taking note of what is really going on within Bangladesh, or in terms of the court's ruling. The way forward, of course, needs to be challenged by both within India and both within Bangladesh as to what really is the current scenario and how the legal obligations will unfold. And that, of course, remains to be seen. We're now going to be taking a look at our next segment that focuses on the SCO Heads of Councils gathering in Moscow. And this is very, very important platform for different countries, including Pakistan, to present its stance. We're represented by a Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Ishaq Dar. We're going to be, of course, taking a look at a number of challenges that are affecting Pakistan and regional security and peace dynamics. And this, of course, is also part of the larger SCO and then the shared mutual goals of multiple countries, and to how exactly different regional players are going to be playing about their current stances and dynamics. And so what is going to be the major issues that are going to be discussed, and how exactly will this platform provide more impetus to Pakistan's stance, is what we're going to be focusing on today. And we've been joined in the newsroom by Ambassador Imran Ali for this discussion. Thank you very much, Ambassador Imran, for joining us and being a part of today's discussion. I'd like your take on what you think of this platform to begin with and the current scenario, because Pakistan's geopolitical stance has had a great shift, and there is, of course, a lot of movement in terms of how different countries and key regional players are interacting with Pakistan. And of course, the SCO's gathering has always been very, very integral to Pakistan's stance. But when you take a look at the current situation in the region, particularly with players like India and Afghanistan, how do you see the SCO Summit in Moscow discuss a lot of the key regional issues and devise a tangible way forward?
Thank you, Sana. I think it's very important, and one of the important things that we must remember is that Pakistan-Russia relations, which were a bit on a pause, got a huge startup with Pakistan joining the SCO, and Russia supported Pakistan's joining of the SCO, whereas there were some countries which were not in favor. So since that, Pakistan and Russia have come together, and this visit, this SCO Heads of Government meeting, is going to be followed by the next main SCO Summit, and it's predicted that it's going to be in Pakistan. So Pakistan would not like this to be focused only on Afghanistan and other things. Pakistan will go along with the broader SCO agenda of less conflict and regional peace.
Right. Ambassador Imran, there's also, of course, the ways in which Pakistan wants to make sure that there is a discussion on the key issues that Pakistan is facing in the region. And of course, I understand that the platform will have its own agendas too, but Pakistan's key issues surrounding regional security dynamics, particularly with Afghanistan and the nexus with India, are very, very important. And we had the Moscow talks earlier that were hosted by Russia too, and Russia is a key player in this. It's the only country that's recognized Afghanistan. How exactly do you think that this relationship dynamic that you've just mentioned yourself is going to affect this conversation, given the fact that multiple players, including India, are going to be part of this?
Yes, I think Pakistan is, when the general document comes out, Pakistan is going to focus on non-interference in each other's affairs and non-exporting of terrorism from one country's soil. I think such language is going to be put by Pakistan in it. But the real meetings are going to be bilateral meetings with Russia on the sidelines of the SCO Summit. And in that, Pakistan is going to discuss Afghanistan as one of the key topics. You very rightly mentioned that Russia has already been holding multilateral conference on Afghanistan. Russia is a key player in Afghanistan. Russia is the first country that has recognized this government. So Pakistan's bilateral talks with Russia are going to be very important. We must also remember that there is a Russian resolution in the UN Security Council on Gaza, which affects Pakistan, because there is a US resolution also. So Pakistan is going to definitely discuss the regional stabilization force for Gaza. And I'm sure somewhere on the sideline, Ukraine is also going to come up. Ukraine is going to be the elephant in the room during the SCO summit. Maybe less discussion on it, but it is going to be on the minds, and also bilaterally. So it's a very important conference. But the bilateral part of our relations with Russia is also very important.
Absolutely. And Ambassador Imran, there is a concern also in terms of when we take a look at especially the bilateral engagements too, how exactly that is going to be putting in more emphasis on our trade and investment relationships, our geopolitical stances, and of course our key issues and our stances on issues such as Gaza that you've just mentioned. And so it's important when we take a look at our relationship with Russia that we're able to leverage this relationship for our own mutual purposes too. And so given the fact that there is a lot going on in the international community at the moment, how do you think that Pakistan and Russia's own relationship is going to impact this discussion, particularly with key issues that are being affected in the international community, in which the United States and the Trump administration also has high stakes? Ambassador Imran, can you hear me? We're unable to connect with Ambassador Imran, but we'll try and do that once again, because there is a lot of dimensions, of course, to how the SCO summit is going to play out and what really are going to be the key factors discussed. Of course, there are issues that both Pakistan and Russia are facing and are extremely important to regional dynamics and peace and security. But there's also a lot of issues that Pakistan would like to put forward, particularly as the ambassador was mentioning, in terms of our own relationship with Russia, and for us to be able to leverage that not just in terms of the key regional aspects that affect Pakistan's current geopolitical positioning, but also Pakistan's larger international outlook in foreign policy relationships with multiple countries, including that with the United States and China. And of course, these are key aspects of the dynamics that Pakistan is currently engaging in. And this is something that we'll have to be very cognizant of as to what Pakistan can potentially do in this regard and what areas can be discussed moving forward. There is a lot of discussions, of course, as to what really can be the way forward that Pakistan can present, but we're going to be seeing more of that as it is being put forward by the Deputy Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister at the Moscow summit. We'll take a short break here and be back with our last story. Welcome back to the newsroom with Sana. We're now going to be taking a look at what is going on at the COP30 with 1 week already down, and of course a lot of discussions around what really has been achieved and what's still left, with many talking about how the actions and implementation plans of a lot of the agenda items still remain to be discussed and haven't really been pondered over, with a lot of the discussions being centered around rhetoric and lip service. And this is essential in terms of how we want to be able to take the COPs forward, and how a lot of the previous COPs are also being questioned in terms of giving tangible results. For that, we've been joined by Dr. Zainab Naeem, who's a climate advocacy expert, SDPI, and is attending COP30 as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab, for being part of the newsroom today. I'd like your perspective in terms of what you think is happening on ground. You're there, you're hearing the discussions, you're able to understand what the different leaders around the world and representatives from different communities are addressing and talking about. Do you think that there is some real substantial discussion being held at the moment, and so far as part of COP30, do you think we're progressing on actually achieving something real out of this COP?
So thank you so much. As this COP30 is happening in Brazil, this has been labeled as the People's COP, because after 33 years of Rio conference is happening in Brazil, in the heart of Amazon, Belém city, where indigenous communities thrive on natural resources. So it has its own symbolic significance. But when I talk about the agenda, so during the first week, the agenda that was adopted was around retaining 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature, emissions reduction, and of course, adaptation financing and just transition. Around this agenda, different documents and texts get developed with consensus from different parties. So far, there has been consensus on a global goal on adaptation around the text, and so this, negotiations are happening. Apart from that, there has been little consensus on the emission reduction, but around mitigation potential. As in COP29, the text that was adopted was transitioning away from fossil fuels. So this time it is an agenda, action agenda, where there's still discussion happening on whether fossil fuels have, we have to transition away, or there is going to be some other neutral terminology. So there is no consensus around that. Civil society organizations have been doing demonstrations on moving away from fossil fuels. Apart from that, I think around adaptation, so the Forest Fund Forever Facility fund has been operationalized, and that is around $5.5 billion for the tropical forests around the world. But around adaptation for Global South, there's still a lot that needs to get consensus by the parties, and negotiations are happening. Around 1.5 degrees Celsius as before COP30, as per the UN emission gap report, the world is far away from the trajectory to achieve 1.5 degrees Celsius and to remain below that. So there has been consensus that the world might reach 2.7 degrees Celsius, and then there might be more impacts if the situation of emergency. But what needs to be done to achieve at least 2.7? So there are negotiations happening, and this at the second week of COP, we might see something getting materialized.
Right. Dr. Zainab, there is also discussion around Article 9.1 of the Paris Agreement that relates to financing, and what you're talking about, of course, the challenges that the Global South is facing and what it's demanding. But it seems that a lot of the representatives of the South are facing procedural hindrances as part of these discussions that seem to be centered around the mechanisms of how exactly that's going to be achieved, and not really in terms of how the Global North is going to uphold those commitments, how exactly will this financing take place, and what really will be the way forward on that. Do you think there's been any breakthrough with regards to this very important aspect, and whether or not there can be a mechanism or a way forward after COP30 to making sure that can happen? Because otherwise this is just referencing that has been done again and again of what happened back in Paris.
Exactly, as you know, even at COP29, there was new financing announced, which was renaming the adaptation goal. That was new collective quantified goal, and then $1.3 trillion pledge was made to finance adaptation with, I believe, $300 billion annually for the Global South. However, this time there has been nothing concrete, decisive action taken around its modalities, around transparency, around accountability, and how to ensure that those pledges reaches the frontline communities. So no debate, so far there's no consensus. And again, on Article 9.1, yes, that's again linked with your adaptation financing. And there has been discussion around, developing indicators to map the progress around adaptation. And even on those indicators, there has been no consensus. But this week is going to be the decisive week. Let's see, because there are many demonstrations happening outside COP venue and even within COP venue by the civil society organizations and by Global South representatives. So we might see something if, because this COP30 was being termed as COP where implementation is expected. If they are unable to do that, it's going to be another talk shop. So we are very much hopeful that this week might see something getting concrete materialized.
Right. And Dr. Zainab, there was also a lot of discussions and emphasis on a carbon management system that has to be put in place. And this was something that was proposed with a lot of ways to curb carbon emissions, and for countries to be able to control that and to place these management systems with the borders. Do you think that there has been any progress in terms of how exactly that will be done? Because there were a lot of challenges to implementing that too.
So I think that's one good news we achieved during week one around carbon markets operationalization and modalities, and Article 6.8. There are many, there's a lot of consensus being made, and thanks to the G77 plus China group, as they have been leading those negotiations, and they have achieved so far the consensus is there, and the pledge has been made, and I believe it's going to be carbon markets is again going to be dominating, Global South and North nexus that should be around private sector engagement and finance streams and blended finance, etc. So yes, that's one good news. But apart from that, there is again accountability and transparency mechanism that needs to be established to ensure that there is no greenwashing by private sector and actual communities receive the co-benefits of carbon market transition as well. For that, I think this time, because US is absent from the negotiations, and that has given a lot of space to China as they're leading the negotiations and emerging as climate champion in the region. So I believe there's going to be a lot more progress around that. But so far, about another financing stream, that is mitigation finance, and apart from that, adaptation finance and even resilience building and loss and damage, we have not seen anything progressive so far.
Right. And when we take a look at, of course, the discussions that are still left, what agenda items do you think are still be part of the next week, and whether or not there will be more discussions and more involvement of a lot of the protesters that are also part this time around of COP30 that have been allowed to demonstrate outside the premises as well. And they, of course, have put forward their own grievances, the community that represent the activists and people who are fighting for climate change and measures to be taken with regards to that. How do you think that affects the discussions that are happening within the key leaderships of different countries? Are they taking into account these sentiments?
Yes, I think that because, as I mentioned, this is happening in Belém, where frontline communities from the Amazon forest have been demonstrating. So the agenda for COP30 was also adopted by the COP30 president as an agenda that is going to benefit the frontline community. So yes, it has its own significance. And for that matter, within the negotiations as well, there has been discussion that the finance must not be a finance that is, limited to for some political gains and to the at federal level only. The finance needs to reach subnational level. It needs to reach the communities that are actually getting affected by the climate change. So there has been a lot of debate around that. And another agenda item that I see, because nationally determined contributions have also been submitted by many countries, and based on that, tracking and matrix indicators are being revised. So I think this time around loss and damage fund modalities, there has been criticism and there has been some discussion too. In week 1, we did not see any progress, but in week 2, there has been some movement by the Board of Loss and Damage Fund. So we might see something getting materialized, but in that fund as well, we require more pledges by the global north and an accountability if they do not fulfill those pledges. Because this time it's a matter of climate justice, and for global south, COP is an extremely important platform where they seek solidarity and where they seek South-to-South cooperation apart from the pledges coming from the global north. So if in case we do not see anything concrete by the end of this week, I do foresee many more demonstrations coming from different communities. So I think in that matter, COP30 presidency is taking effective measures to ensure that there is more talk towards implementation rather than talks around, not gaining consensus on the matter. So yes, they are working around it.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab Naeem, for being part of the newsroom and sharing your views from COP30 as to what is going on at the ground. Of course, a lot of discussions around whether or not COP30 is achieving what it is meant to are still being discussed. We still have a number of days left for these discussions to take place. But what is essential is for tangible and real outcomes from this platform, as is the requirement of the international community, and to, of course, also take into account the sentiments and the rights and grievances of different communities, including that in Brazil and in other parts of the world that are the direct effectees of climate change disasters and climate-induced catastrophes, as is Pakistan, along with much of the global south. That's all that we have from the newsroom today. We'll be back with more stories tomorrow. Stay tuned to Pakistan TV.